I figured I'd take a chance while I have a couple of good examples here on why the Mazda B6 doesn't really produce a lot of power out of the factory. Obviously it's a Miata and they weren't trying to, but still some of the areas of improvement you might be looking for. So the first thing is when you look at the cylinder head here, you can tell that the actual port angle comes down towards the valves from the top of the head. So the air is riding down into the cylinder head here from the side. So you got to picture your air path as already kind of at an angle here. Then you take your intake manifold here that has a bend in it, all the way back around to the plenum here. So the air has to make this whole path in from the throttle body through the plenum, turn around here, come all the way down, come back up, and then tilt back down again so that it can line up to actually meet with the engine. So the big issue here is that every time you have one of these bends, you create a low spot where air is separating away from the wall. So you actually create a big spot where you don't get very good airflow happening. If you try to look directly down the port, you can see it's not a very smooth shot. And if you then angle it to match what you're looking at from the port, or from the actual port on the cylinder head, you don't have very long space in front of that port for the air to travel in a straight line, really smooth out, build up a lot of velocity again, and keep going into the port. So what you end up with is a intake manifold that has to bring all of its air in here through the throttle body, an already kind of small orifice, directly into a squared off orifice to bring everything in, which is large enough to work well, but it's kind of blocky, not especially smooth. Then comes all the way down the manifold, bends down in the back there. So I can stick my light in, you can see it shines right down. Then tries to come up and then angle into the engine. So what you end up with is effectively that straight shot right there being about your only actual good airflow space. So you end up with a tiny little port on this engine instead of the large one you actually physically have. It becomes a big airflow restriction and keeps everything from coming into this engine nice and fast and smooth like it would like. So if you straighten out your intake path here, like you see a lot of people do with ITBs or carburetors, because they'll just come off at one straight path to allow the air to come in nice and fast, you actually end up picking up a lot of naturally aspirated power because you get rid of all the restriction that comes from all the bends that this has, coming all the way around and having to pass through a tiny throttle body in the first place.